If I had cancer, you wouldn't ask me why. If I had a terminal illness, you wouldn't think it was my fault and that I was just seeking attention. But because I have an eating disorder, my illness is minimized, and people seem to have this tendency to believe that it's my fault and that I'm just doing it to make myself look like the models in magazines and to fit into society. I have to think about that and think, why would anyone want this? If I have an eating disorder, people ask me why. What else could go wrong? Why would I want to starve myself, binge, purge, to engage in self-hatred and find yourself in such belittling places that your mind is your enemy and that you're living every day in absolute hell? Why would I inflict that upon myself just because I want to be a certain size? It doesn't make sense, because eating disorders are not about being a certain size. They are an illness that needs to be treated as such. I think that that's one of the things that really makes it difficult in recovery, because the illness is seen as something less than. It's seen as not a tangible illness, because it is an illness of the mind. If somebody's dying of cancer, you can physically see what's wrong with them. And yet, to somebody who is dying of an eating disorder mentally because of the inability to cope with the triggers that present themselves, and to be able to find yourself in a place where the only thing that you can do is to manipulate your food and control it in order to cope with your surroundings, is incredible. To think that somebody would do that to themselves on purpose. I don't envy those people who think that eating disorders are not bad. Sometimes I think that people with cancer get away easily, in a sense, because if something's wrong, they don't need to talk about it. They can just say, it's because I have cancer, and stop. And yet with eating disorders, it's not that way. If I say to somebody I have an eating disorder, they look at me and question why. What could make me want to do that to myself? I have lived with the hell of an eating disorder for too many years, and I know that the self-hatred and the negativity that comes as a result of that is not something that anyone would inflict upon themselves. You hear stories all the time of people who find themselves inpatient in hospitals, and yet they continue to fight to lose weight. They're dying of complications due to their eating disorder, and yet they're still fighting. They're still fighting to lose weight and to continue, because the beast, the monster in their head, won't let them stop. Sometimes I do envy people with cancer, because their illness is seen as legitimate, and yet those with eating disorders is not. If somebody simply wanted to lose weight, it would not be an illness. When you reach the point that you need to continue to manipulate food and restrict yourself, to engage in symptoms, and to just fight with everything to continue living in the distorted thinking, it's not because you want to, it's because there is nothing else left to do. Imagine everything in your mind saying that who you are, that what you are, is absolutely worthless. It's what I heard daily for years. And to know that people look at other illnesses, I know I'm picking on cancer in this, but it is an illness that many people create awareness for and just don't give a second thought about it. And yet, to think of what I've suffered, does that make my illness less? Does that make my suffering less? Not saying that somebody with cancer doesn't suffer, they do, but they suffer a different type of illness, a physical illness. Mental illnesses are crazy to deal with and to cope with, especially when you don't have that ability to work on recovery, because people are trying to hinder you and to say that your illness is not legitimate. That is so horrible when that happens, because it puts you off and makes you not want to recover. And yet you know that you can't suffer through that hell anymore, because you know that it's the worst thing you could ever experience. I find it funny because I talk about mental illness a lot, being a huge fan of psychology, and one of the things that I say when I talk to people is that when I grow up, I want to work with people with eating disorders. They may not know my personal background, and yet the very fact that I say I want to work with people with eating disorders, they ask me why. They say that's not something that they could fathom me doing. Why would I even consider that? And yet, if I was to say I want to work with cancer patients or another terminal illness, I would be applauded for my heroic effort to help those who are sick heal. What makes a mental illness any different? Mental illnesses are a different form of illness, yes, but it doesn't mean that the pain's not there. It doesn't mean that it isn't a manipulative and controlling thing that consumes the life and takes away everything. I look at my own personal experience with an eating disorder and I think, wow, to think that this isn't an illness is crazy. Never would I have thought, oh, well, I'm going to starve myself because that seems like the rational thing to do. I'm going to put myself in therapy because I want to sit and chat with somebody about how to eat properly. No, the complete opposite. It is an illness that needs to be treated. Mental illnesses are just as legitimate as physical illnesses. And during this month, Mental Health Awareness Month, I want to speak up and use my voice to create awareness and to break that stigma, to show that mental illnesses are just as legitimate as a terminal illness such as cancer. People might listen to this video and only hear me dissing cancer, but I'm not. All I'm saying is that eating disorders are illnesses that are being put down, and in comparison to cancer, it is an illness that is seen as fake, as made up, as fabricated to get attention, and as I said, a sign of weakness for the person. And yet somebody with cancer isn't blamed for their illness. I want to leave you with that thought of the difference between cancer and eating disorders. I hope this video did something to point out the difference and to show you that mental illnesses are legitimate illnesses. And I know that my illness, I don't know why I said that twice, but my illness is not something that I could have chosen or wished upon myself. It's not a self-seeking desire to lose weight. It's something that controlled my everyday during the height of my illness and left me in such a place that I was shattered and that I didn't know where to turn and that everything was my enemy because I was just falling apart. So I want to leave you guys with that. I hope all of you are speaking up this month during Mental Health Awareness Month. I hope you will share this video with people who may not understand mental illness so that we can break the stigma and that those who suffer from mental illnesses, especially eating disorders, can get the treatment that they deserve. Okay, I'll talk to you guys all soon, and I hope you guys are all well. Bye.